Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another weekly CAD class. Hopefully you're hearing us, and it's all going out. Yes, it looks like it. Sorry, I'm in charge again. Dave's away. He's off doing some scanning, which is absolutely brilliant news. It's Tom and Dick and myself this week. So, gentlemen, do say hello, starting off with Dick, who looks like he's ready to say hello.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dick Crabb, and I am a sound engineer.
And Tom, how are you doing?
I'm fantastic. My name's Tom White. I do technical design drawings for theatre and live events.
Excellent. So this week we're going to talk about a few things. We've heard that you guys enjoyed last week, us going back over commands and things like that and bits we've missed out. So this week we're going to talk about some data extraction, how to take data out of your CAD plan, which can be very useful for giving to other departments, layouts, carpet areas and things like that. And then Tom's going to do a bit in AutoCAD. I'm going to do a little bit in Vectorworks as well. So then we're going to move on to some commands we realise we haven't talked about before within AutoCAD this time. So it'll be regen, purge, flatten, and W block will be the commands we'll work on this week. And if we still have time at the end of it, we'll talk about workflow in big projects where you're receiving plans or change plans on a weekly basis. And Tom's going to talk about the best way to deal with that and make life easier, hopefully. So thank you very much. And Tom, whenever you're ready, you want to talk about some data extraction, it'd be fantastic.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tom. Hopefully people can see my screen now. Okay, so we're going to talk about data extraction. And I suppose one would have an opinion that sometimes people feel that the AutoCAD drawings or the Vectorworks drawings or other programs are available. The information is sometimes locked into AutoCAD. And what we're going to I'm going to try my best. Whether I'll be successful, I'll try my best to explain that actually what's quite great about AutoCAD and also Vectorworks in a moment is that everything that's within it is also you can extract, which is fantastic. So in this circumstance, I'm looking at a plan view of the Fira in Barcelona, and I think this is Hall 6. This was a job a year or so ago, and what we need to know from this drawing is, so we're looking at the plan view of the whole of the hall, which is hundreds of meters long and 100 or so meters wide, so it's a massive, massive space. But I'm going to use zoom to just this area here. So what this information is a mark out on the floor. So the mark out's done with gaffer tape on top of the gaffer tape there are numbers. And so the numbers in this circumstance is, I believe this is scenic 09, scenic 10. And so the mark on the ground is this mark is marked here, and this is one end of a desk, I believe it might have been, and this is the other end of the desk.
So this is different from the block attributes that you talked to us about, the at out and at in. These aren't blocks now, are they? This is raw data.
This is raw. This is in this circumstance, it's raw data, and I believe, Dom, if you want to take that question on board, I think you can extract raw data, which is what I'm going to do in a second, but also you can extract elements that are within a block as well.
Absolutely, yeah, you can do. And what we're going to show today is Tom's going to show you one method, which is the command is data extraction. Yep. And the other commands are, Dick just mentioned, at in, so attributes in and attributes out. And that should be said the wrong way around. It should be attribute out and attribute in. So you can take out block data. It's a typical one when I'm doing lighting. I can extract the data of, say, all the lights. So within the lights, we have attributes, and we'll have the color, the wattage, the lens size. And I can extract all that data, and it goes into an Excel spreadsheet. And then I could go and change the gel color. I can change the channel numbering. And then that's through at out, and it comes out as a text file, goes into Excel, edit it, save it as a text file, and then at in, and you can bring all that information back in. And when it at out, it attaches a unique ID to every block. So it then uses the same unique ID to put the information back into the blocks you took it from originally and changed. So this is two ways of getting data out of AutoCAD and being able to use it and also possibly put it back in again. So,
yeah. And so the example I'm going to present now is I would like to have the points this point here, and this point here, and this point here, and this point here, written in a numerical way, in another way, rather than me clicking on this and saying, oh, it's position 175497, I would desire to do it automatically. So I'm going to do Z, enter, E, enter to zoom extents, and I'm going to write in data extraction. I'm not going to spell the whole thing. So in AutoCAD for the last 3 or 4 years, if you start writing a word, often the rest of the words, as long as it's spelled vaguely correctly, the rest of the word will be automatically filled out for you. And as soon as that's the case, you can press enter, and it will open a dialog box of that command. In this circumstance, is data extraction. You can probably do this better than I'm doing it now, but in this circumstance, I would like to create a new data extraction and click next. I would like to save this on the desktop and call it Tom1. And I would like to extract from this drawing, click next. And in this circumstance, I only desire to export the points. So therefore, you can see arcs or circles or hatches or polylines can all be exported. But in this circumstance, I only desire for the points to be exported. So therefore, only points is ticked. I'm going to do Control A to select all and untick everything. Is that going to work? No, that didn't work, unfortunately. But I'm going to untick all of these except for positions X, Y, and Z. So X is...
Tom, you can also filter on the groups on the right-hand side. Just untick the groups on the right-hand side.
Oh, can I do that? Oh, that's amazing. Okay, so now, geometry. So therefore, X, Y, and Z. Fantastic. And this is the information it's going to export. So visually, you can see it's giving you a preview, and this is what we're going to show. And in this circumstance, I'm going to open it in Excel, and I'm going to save it on the desktop. Click on here, and I'm going to save it there, and I'm going to finish that. It thinks about it for a second or two. I think it might have finished already, and I'm going to open this. What I find this quite useful is that I can check my work. So in this circumstance, I have one item, which is deemed as a point. It's in this position in X, this position in Y, and it's a position of 0 and Z. If I scroll down here, I have made quite large errors. I have a position of Z at almost 3.2 meters. It doesn't technically matter, but it's helpful to tell me that.
The points, what are they? Are they specific things that you've put on the drawing, or are they... for example, the two ends of a line.
Exactly. So therefore, in this circumstance, I have, if it opens up again, sorry, that's later on in the process, I've opened up here and I do Z and then zoom to this area. And I'm going to, we've used the UCS before, haven't we? So yeah. I'm going to type UCS, and I'm going to rotate it by 90 degrees. I'm going to type in plan, enter, and it rotates the whole drawing by 90 degrees. So this here, so we can read it easier. So therefore, Scenic 196 and Scenic 197 in this circumstance are related to one another because it has a polyline in between. But the actual, if I type in point, so a point is an item. It's an item that you can draw. Okay. But what's good about it is you cannot do anything except for click in the center point. So therefore, when you do, for example, if I was to quickly make a block and I do Control X, Control Shift V to make a block, the center point is here, but that's not of any use. And so therefore, the data extraction for this circumstance, the surveyor who's marking these points on the floor in Barcelona desires to know the exact center. So therefore, if I was to make a block such as this, the surveyor needs to know that point there, but because I've made the block with the insertion point at the bottom left, this is of no use. So I'm going to E enter for arrays. And so what this is deemed, as you can see in the properties in the top right hand corner, as a point. There's no way of me physically clicking here that it doesn't pick it up at all. So a point is an item that you can draw, but importantly, it only has one point in the center. Is that a good description of Dick?
So that makes complete sense. And we see Dominic put his other hat on and come out and mark out the FIRA doing Cisco Live, and presumably it's that kind of thing that you're doing.
Absolutely, yeah, it is, and this allows, as Tom says, to give you a precise moment in time, and it would seem, I'm guessing that the surveyor has some very nice surveying equipment he can go around and then work off a single point within the drawing, a single UCS or the world UCS, where these all calibrate back to.
Yes, absolutely. I think, unfortunately, I don't have it on this drawing, but yes, he'll if you ever were to go to a venue, he could tell you that on this column here there's a retro point, or on, I don't know, on this column here there's a retro point. But yes, so therefore, in this circumstance, because it's been done for 3 years in a row, I think now, you're entirely correct. There's a known datum that he has to work from.
I think that's the important bit, saying this to everybody, that having your known datum is actually crucial, but otherwise nothing will make sense or work back to that datum. So
yeah. So please, can I skip forward before we go backwards?
Yeah.
One of the thought processes we're talking about was flatten.
Yes.
So I'm going to erase this. To totally be on the safe side, I'm sure there's other ways of doing it, but in my opinion, the safest way of going back to the correct UCS is going to the word top up here and clicking on top. So therefore, it's rotated the whole drawing. The UCS, as we talked about last week or the week before, has gone back to the world UCS. Everything's in a known position. I could send this to Dom and he would fully understand it. And I could send it to Dick and he would fully understand it in comparison to me rotating it. So therefore, I've gone to the original location and the surveyor would understand the relationship between the UCS and Hall 6. What I would like to do, because I've proven that I've made quite huge errors here in a couple of circumstances, I would like to use the filter command. I would like to select point, add to list, apply, and select all the points here. So I have 369 points. I'd like to move them to the right-hand side by 150 meters. And I'd like to, so because we're looking in 2D and we're looking in plan view, suppose technically it doesn't really matter that there's a Z value to some of these points, but it would be wonderful if there wasn't. I believe that I can think of two ways to do this. So I'm going to copy this another 150 meters. I could select all of these 369 points, and we can see that there's a X varies, a Y varies, and unfortunately there's a Z varies. So when it has the word asterisk varies asterisk, it means there's more than one item which the information within it is doesn't match. So in this circumstance, because I know that I can override it, I could override Z varies to 0, enter. So,
and that will move all of them down to a 0 Z-axis.
Exactly. So therefore, what would be the benefit? The benefit would be that there's no confusion between me and the surveyor. So because in this circumstance, if the surveyor was to get this information, they quite rightly would be concerned that why didn't I check? And why is this point 182, 1040 from the floor? In real life, they probably wouldn't. But yeah, if there was all lots of different Z, might be asking, are the points going to be on top of a structure, and therefore they get to the venue and the structure is not physically there? So how are they going to mark a point, a meter in the air, for example? You can override all of these by mistake. I could do 0 in Y, and you'll see they're all at the bottom there, which is a bit of a shame. I'm going to. Okay, so the command flatten was one thing that I was going to discuss, and I think this is going to work. So. Why would I do this? If these were polylines rather than points, it wouldn't be possible to overwrite it like this. So therefore, if there was I'm going to use a polyline command. If that there was not on a Z of 0, I don't believe there's an automated way in the properties that I could overwrite it, unless Dom could think of a way he could do that.
No.
So therefore, you'd have to use the flatten command. The flatten command is moving something that has a Z value from Z of plus anything or minus anything to Z of 0. And it will always flatten in the view you're in. I'm not going to do it because I think it would take a moment to do. The computer wouldn't really like it. But if I was to rotate this to a totally arbitrary isometric view and use the flatten, it would still change everything to Z, but it wouldn't be correct because it would be going along the view that I'm in. So it's really, really important that I'm definitely in top view. So therefore, I'm definitely above the drawing, and the Z is definitely only towards me and away from me. So I'm going to write flatten in the command line, enter, and I'm going to select these points, and I'm hoping this is going to work. I'm going to press enter, and it's asking me two questions. One question with two answers. Would I like to remove the hidden lines? I always try and do no, because I believe it uses so much computer power and it doesn't always give you the right results. So I'm going to do no, enter. It thinks about it for a second, and I'm hoping, here we go. So on the right-hand side, our Z has a value of 0. So that was two ways of changing the points from a Z, from a value of Z as something other than 0 to 0. So we, on the right-hand side one, we did, we overwrote it in the geometry, and in the left-hand side one, we use a command called flatten.
Brilliant.
And I suppose, just as a double check, I'm going to use the filter command, and I'm going to do object, and I'm going to press enter, and nothing worked. Filter command, I'm going to do apply, because I deleted them, didn't I? Whoops, that was a mistake. So therefore, I'll move that 150 meters to the left. I could do data extraction. I'm going to quickly go through this, save it as Tom2, save that, next. And I'm going to do everything and points, and then geometry, and then next, and then output as a file, and I'm going to do it on the desktop. I'm going to save version 2.2 and save it there and do next. And I'm very much hoping that has is that going to work? There we go. So that has made all the Zs to 0, which it has. Yep. So that's one way of data extraction in AutoCAD for PC.
Absolutely brilliant. Well done, Tom. Hopefully that's useful to everybody. And I could do a quick data extraction in Vectorworks. I'll show a couple of different types of data extraction in Vectorworks. Hopefully the screen share is coming through. See my screen? In Vectorworks, so I'll put lighting head back on for a little bit. Close these, get rid of these. In lighting, we want to get information out quite a lot of the time, gel colors, circuit numbers. And Vectorworks allows us, in some of the tools it has in it, to pull out what's going on. So in this instance, this is a rigging position. Within this position, I've called it box truss 1. And Vectorworks understands that all these lights are on box truss 1. And they're all sitting there in air. But actually very quickly flowing around, it's actually a 3D drawing, and there are all the lights on it. What this is allowing me to do, this is a report by an area. So this allows, just within this truss, within this box truss, to extract the data for this area, which is useful when we're doing sheets. I'll show you in a second. So we could give a plan of just this area to crew, and they could go off and rig it, and they know instantly what's in this area. There's 10 atomics, there's 22 Vipers, and 12 Very-Lights. What we also extract out here, and you can see on the side of my screen, I can choose what I show, is we can show wattages and weights and stuff like that. And in Dick's thing of telling a story, if this information is on my plans and it travels to the riggers, they can tell straight away without having to phone us up what we're putting on that truss, what the weight loading is, and off we go. And it also allows anyone who's, if I was designing, the production electrician to know what the power draw is on any of the lights I'd asked for. So that's one area. And if we were in a little kind of concert hall, we'd have a backlight truss, and that's reporting exactly the same in the same way. It's dealing with the lights that are on this area only. But that's not very rocking if you've got a huge hall and you need to know more area. And so Vectorworks creates something, and this is in Spotlight again, a key. There's exactly the same information, but this key is showing us everything within this plan. So within this concert hall in the Fiero area. And it allows me to label it all up. It doesn't do this automatically, but it allows me to show in each area. And if this was going onto an overall plan, or if it was going to the lighting company, they could very quickly, easily tell what I'd spec throughout the show and what areas. And I'll just very quickly show you how it does it. It has a build list, and what would be on this side was anything that was not in the plan. And it goes, I can call it box truss 1. I put these labels in. I've put a note in here that all arrows need to point towards a stage. They all tilt the same way. And it then builds that list. And what this allows us to do is, if I was going to go for a general lighting plan and this was going to be issued to the rental company or anything, there is the 2 trusses with information on, with weight loadings and power calcs, and this would allow them to get going on the first instance. And I have to apologise, we did say Cookie would hopefully join us this week, and this is where somebody like Cookie would take over. He's sadly busy at the moment. We will get him in a couple of weeks' time. But this is where he would then take over and put channel information and circuit and addresses on, and then he would extract that data again through a program called LightWrite. And I really hope when we do get him, he can talk to us about that. But this is no good in kind of size and scale for people reading on site, on different teams. So we can then break that information down in layouts, as Tom's talked about before, exactly the same in sheets in Vectorworks. I can just do an individual one of this truss. So this is just picking up the position information only and the actual box truss. So a team can take this plan off, and off they go. And they've got the information they need, and they can pull the boxes off the store and we're ready to go. So that's kind of very basic in Spotlight information, extracting information and how the information is carried through. So if we just choose one light, the lights carry all the information. We would then eventually fill these bits in with Cookie of multi-ways and universes, but they do carry an awful lot of information per unit, and including the weight and the wattage. That doesn't deal with truss, which is one of the biggest ones I have in my life. Is I designed this truss, and we want to get 2 things. 1, I don't want to count it all. 2, if I do count it all, it puts human error in, and I'm a bear with a very small brain most of the time, so I can usually muck it up halfway through, or the phone rings, or I want a cup of coffee. So I get the CAD program to do it. It's much cleverer that way and less error, chances of error. And Vectorworks, like Data Extract, has a thing called reporting. And I can basically, like AutoCAD, pretty much ask it anything. And I don't use half its power, but what I do use it for is to ask it about going to find truss on a regular basis. And it's in Spotlight again, in Spotlight, you create report. And in here, we can choose what we want and how it is. So actually down here, I want truss records. I want the record for truss. And in here, you'll see that it's picking up all that information, just like the light and the object information palette. Vectorworks knows about the truss. It knows about its weight and stuff like that. So a typical report would be, for me, is manufacturer, the model. And this is me trying to tell a story to the riggers. I know what I've drawn. It's me trying to tell the riggers what I want, how much I want booked, and how we want to do it. And also, there's little tiny spaces in here and things like that, which may not be seen on a plan, on a PDF, or just a straight thing. So this allows them to do a total count. Actually, we don't want that one. Get rid of that. We don't want imperial. We're not in America. So we'll go for metric, and we'll add that in. And then we can also do functions. So we're going to do a function, and in functions, I'm going to ask it to count. So we'll put a count in, and then I can order this of where we want this. So I would like the count first. Like the count first. Then I want the manufacturer, then I want the model name, and then I want its metric weight. And we can do exactly the same. We can either ask it to summarize the same things. So we can say, can you summarize all the same model names? Brilliant. So, and then I can actually place this on the drawing. We click OK. And hopefully by magic, if it behaves itself, there we are. It'll give me a report of the truss within this drawing. And it's just done an auto count, so I can send this off. So if I just quickly show you the truss count layout. So there's a very quick ditty of my truss. And then this can go, and it gives us the auto count of what's going on, who manufactures it, what its model name is, and what length it is. And we could add weight and everything in there as well. All these things auto update. So if I was going to change this, I can come back into here and ask it to regenerate that field, refresh that field, and it would do exactly the same. It's the same for the blocks over here. We can come in, go down the bottom and ask it to refresh the list. And if I put more lights in, it would add them up. So that's a very basic way of getting information out of Vectorworks, either as a truss report or as a key or area report. And when Cookie can join us, he's going to talk something about LightWrite. which takes more lighting information. It'll be very lighting focused, but it's how we get lighting information in and out of Vectorworks on that line. So hopefully that helps. Would you mind if I just very quickly talk about AutoCAD, my fun with AutoCAD this week, gentlemen? Sharon Hobden, who watches us every week, was inspired by Tom last week and his dynamic blocks. And she works in theatre, and she wanted a block, a bit like the points you were just talking about, that would allow her to receive information, I believe, from a set designer in an Excel sheet and pull in the XY information, and the blocks would auto-populate themselves on the plan according to that XY information. But first of all, we need to build a block. And this is where I have both Mac CAD and Windows CAD, and Mac still isn't totally there. And this was actually one of the classic ones. Mac CAD, I built this block in Windows because Mac CAD, until 2021, so I've just upgraded 2021, because up to 2021, it couldn't recognize the center of an object. Like Tom was showing for the point, we needed the center of the object to generate the precise information. So any of you out on MacCAD, I really recommend the update to 2021, which I've just done this week, because it has put a load of extra stuff in. But it does allow some of these dynamic commands now to happen. And it would allow us, either in Tom's way, we could come along and add on a load of points. And there's a command that Tom's going to talk about later, but these are all the same at the moment. Hopefully the regen command will work, which is regenerate, regen. If I hit that, you'll see it's automatically updated all the XY information within those points.
Can it do the Z as well?
I believe so, yes, there is an option. I need to go back to the Windows version and just remake the block, which is what I was asking you, if we could make it work on yours, your speaker stuff.
I can't on draft site, but going back however many weeks it was, and I was talking about D&B's Array Calc, the program that sound people use with working with one particular brand manufacturer, and their predictive software allows for creating basic venues, and it automates with SketchUp the paid versions of pretty well. But I've been faking it using their import-export, and going back to the point clouds, if you drop those XYZs on, it can then report out, because I briefly showed you the Athens basketball arena, big planes of seating blocks. All I want is those 4 points. You dob one of those in as you're drawing up the plan, and that gives out the information that I need. As easy as you like, doesn't it?
So let's try and do that homework this week. I will see if I can produce an XYZ block, which I believe I can do, and then we'll do some data extraction and feed it into the array calc and see how we go from there.
And see what happens. No, I think that might be the little missing block.
Literally, figuratively.
We do this live. We do just make some of this stuff up as we go along.
Yeah. So I think my final recommendation was, if you are using Mac CAD, yes, we all know there's bits missing. The latest update to 2021 is quite a big leap with stuff like this working, and they've put a whole lot of just looking at layer control. That's much better, and they've put a lot of the compare stuff in. The XREF compare is in here now as well. So if you're not a monthly license user and you buy it occasionally, I think this could be worth a buy as an upgrade for you all. And I hope that all makes sense, and reporting from Vectorworks and various other things.
And also, and I have to say, from the sound people's perspective, the at-outs that Tom and Dominic have shown me, they work perfectly well. I have little Excel spreadsheets that I can then merge with D&B's R1 outputs, so that we create a single Excel spreadsheet. I can create a single Excel spreadsheet which has all of the amplifier information, all of the speaker information, the Soccerpex patch, what have you, and you can network it back into the amplifiers, and everything knows what it's doing. It's such a time-saving tool. It's fabulous.
Absolutely brilliant. Yeah, and I think if I work on these XYZ blocks, and then we'll see if we can do a little bit of workflow with you and demonstrate it either next week or the week after. and hopefully explain to more than just line folks. So very quickly in this, if you're watching and you're interested in this at in and at out, in Lighting we build lots of blocks with attributes in, which we can then at out, edit the attributes, color information, channel information, DMX universe, whatever you want, and then put it back in. And I think this is a way possibly for sound to do it as well, that you can send information in and out of CAD very, very easy, very quickly. And even CAD terms super efficiently. It doesn't really crunch the data.
Do you want to see? Do you want to see it? Am I going to
go? If your machine's not going to fall over and be
no, it's not. There we go. Look. So this, when it comes up, this is data extraction this is Dominic's Harry's Theatre. So each loudspeaker has. Dominic was talking about the unique handles. This is what DraftSight call them, handles, the unique number that's attached to everything. Here's the blocks that I've created, a unique ID. And then if I flip over to this one, go on, flip over. These columns are from D&B's Array Calc, and then merging with the stuff from the from DraftSight and the CAD side. Single spreadsheet, all of the stuff, all of the information, and it's all there.
Well done, Dick. Supreme effort. So we just need to get the Z information in there now and we're off.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Tom, are you ready for a bit more CAD teaching?
Absolutely. Another way that I use the data extraction is purely so that I just need to, even myself, I need to put something in Excel, and rather than just writing out, I just use the data extraction. It's just a massively useful tool.
I think seriously, it stops the human error factor, and some of the data we're extracting with human error has huge consequences. So anything that automates it, in my books, is a great thing.
So there's a Lisp that I have in AutoCAD, just going back one step about the data extraction that Don was mentioning in Vectorworks. Unfortunately, it's not live, but in this instant, I can type in count and it'll give me a visual representation of all the blocks in this drawing. So in the same way, if you can do this with the count command, you're able to do it with the data extraction. So therefore, it's just a very, very quick way of doing a data extraction, but it's not live. So therefore, if I was to delete 600 seats, this image would not change. So that's where Vectorworks is so much more powerful in circumstances such as this.
This is one of the Lisps you were talking about in one of the earlier shows, wasn't it?
So a Lisp can be written by anyone. And there are websites around where you can buy or donate, depending on the website. And there are it's a really interesting subject because some of the lists that people write, they're so unbelievably clever. I just don't understand why they're not included in AutoCAD. But I'm sure there's a reason.
There's a lot of the same in Vectorworks. There's a lot of third-party stuff. I mean, God, this stuff's brilliant.
That one that you showed us, Tom, does that have a name? I've been trying to look for it, and
as far as I'm aware, it's called Count.
Count,
as in 1, 2, 3, 4 count.
And for anybody listening, it's leemac.com.
lee-mac.com.
Thank you. Yeah.
So sorry, that was just going back one step. So I was trying to figure out, while Don was explaining his brilliant data extraction, how I would describe regen. So one regen, which people might have come across, is you're zooming in and out of the drawing and you get to the point where AutoCAD just won't physically let you zoom out anymore. Unfortunately, I can't make it happen right now. But basically, it's saying I don't have enough computer power, don't know what to do, so I'm going to prevent you zooming out to focus my computer power on what you're seeing. So one way of overcoming that, other than doing Z enter E enter to zoom extents of the whole drawing, you can type regen. So regen is regenerating the drawing. It's giving you. I was going to make something up. I honestly don't know what it does, but it makes the drawing really, really good. And an example.
It just redraw lines, doesn't it? It just forces it to redraw all the lines and put everything back in place.
Exactly. Another visual way that you might see is this circle here. It's deemed as a circle, but you might be zooming in and out so many times, and you zoom in it, and you're like, hang on a minute, isn't that faceted or very, very heavily faceted? And that is the computer just thinking, I don't want to focus on the whole drawing because the user is using the whole drawing. Some of the things that I can simplify visually, I'm going to simplify arcs, get faceted, circles get faceted. So one way to overcome it, you just type in regen, and like Dom said, it goes over the whole drawing, regenerates everything, turns arcs visually back into arcs and circles visually back into circles.
Yeah, I'm sure users out there have had AutoCAD have moments, and Tom and I are trying to explain this to Dick that sometimes CAD just has had enough. And this is one of the commands to allow it just to get itself sorted back out online again.
Exactly, and so this here is this is Ericsson 2000 MWC 2019. It must have been, I guess, and this was a mark out of the position of power locations, I believe, or data locations, and exactly the same as Dom wrote that fantastic block this week. It's not as complicated, but essentially the X and the Y, because it has a grey background. I think I mentioned in the past when a text field has a grey background, it's telling you that the computer is filling that information out for you. So in this circumstance, this point here, which we talked about earlier, is a point, and that center point there has an X of 2.7 meters and a Y of 4.1 meters from that line there or that line there. So in this circumstance, I've overwritten the UCS. So the world UCS is generally in this drawing is up here, or actually where that crosses there. And I've overwritten it because that purple line and that purple line is physically going to be marked on the ground by image construction, and they need to know that they need to go 1.7 meters in that direction and 7.4 meters in that direction. But what you'll see here, I've copied this information, but it's not updating it for me. And you're like, oh, what have I done wrong here? So one way to update it, you can type regen, and it goes through the whole drawing and it regenerates, as we talked about. So that's regen or regenerate.
And for those who might be involved in markouts, those X, Ys refer to the points. Is that the X and Y readout? Is that something you've done yourself then?
Yeah, so I can't remember exactly how I wrote this, but it's a text field. Oh, whoops, sorry. It's text field, and I might be making. Oh, here we go. So So when it has a grey background, like I mentioned, the computer is filling the information out for you. You can overwrite it, but the only way of overwriting it is deleting all the information and typing a measurement. So in theory, you could do that, but it would take a terribly long time. So therefore, this information here is, so when you put text in, you can add a field to it. And the field in this circumstance, it's asking the object. Sorry, I was pointing to the screen, but nobody can see my finger. I've got object, it's got position, it's got decimal, and it's, in this circumstance, it's the Y position that I've ticked. And I've got a precision of 0, so it's easy to read. So therefore, in this circumstance, it doesn't actually matter that it could be 4787.001. I just want to know it's 4.7 meters away.
That's a really, and it is something that I might actually use, and we're back to, loudspeakers or lights on a truss, the mark out thereof. So those are inserting a field into your drawing, is that?
Yeah, so inserting a field into text. I think Dom might well be looking at this and saying that Tom didn't necessarily do this very good, and I think I'd agree. I wouldn't necessarily do this in the same manner, because in this circumstance I haven't attached the block and the text together, but I presume, however I did this, it was appropriate at the time. But yeah, the actual grey thing, which is the most important thing, is it's called a field. So it's you can do. I don't know if I could do it quickly now. I do end text, and rather than saying hello one, I can put a field in, and I can. There we go, field. I was thinking, where was that going to be? But it could be anything. It could be date is the easiest one. So I'm going to do today's date in that format. And there we go. So hello one is on the 2nd of July 2020.
Which we've discovered in your...
It's hugely powerful, Dick, the whole field data, because as Tom's layout sheets and stuff like that, he's putting stuff into his layout sheets. So plot date, date of drawing, issue number, all that stuff can be automated. It goes back to the workflow. The more of this you can do, that Vectorworks is automatically updating. So a classic one I use field data for was one agency I worked for, always wanted the drawing name and number, which got updated on every issue. And they also wanted the issue of doing. And if you've got 20 or 30 layouts, to go through them all is like really, really boring. If field data will just automatically update it every single time you plot, or to put the new plot date in, you'll put the new issue, and you'll put the new drawing number in. Done. Save time, move on. And people can explore it. And the more you explore, the more you can find. You can automate within the drawing.
And it's fantastic. And I've been looking and trying to figure out how you make these beautiful when you go to the paper space. And you can put them in there, so you don't. My brain just couldn't get around this. You don't have to put everything in the model space. Some stuff you can just put into the paper space to go with the drawing that you print out.
Absolutely, and it's kind of going back to weeks and weeks ago when we were talking about having this template file. That Tom has a wonderful template file, and I have one in Vectorworks as well, and one in AutoCAD. That you fill the data in once and then leave it, and it just gets on and updates it for you. So it is kind of the Tom's PDF. You're trying to get a drawing out of the door to a production manager who's about to walk into a venue. You don't have to worry about that stuff. It just gets on with it. And 6 months for a project, you just every time you hit print or PDF, it's there and done, and you're up to date. And you don't have to think about it, waste time on it.
And just whilst we're talking on this subject, I'm going along and re-watching all of the episodes, trying to create some indexes of what we've been talking about when, and roughly the sort of time in every episode, and links back to all of the past episodes, whether they be Facebook or YouTube's.
Thank you very much, Manny. It's very kind of you.
It's very good for me. It's a great learning experience seeing it all again.
So I think that is regen. I'm going to talk about purge. Okay, so this is, I don't know what Dom's biggest bugbear is, but this is my biggest bugbear. When you get a drawing through of a theatre or a live event space, and the file size is 25 megabytes or something like that, and you're like, why is it 25 megabytes? It's a 2D drawing. I can clearly see it's a 2D drawing. Often, all you have to do is type in purge. A dialog box will come up, and by standard, when you type in purge, the purgeable item is highlighted, but you could also see the non-purgeable item. Essentially, I'm going to go back a few steps, but essentially I'm going to do Z enter, E enter to zoom extend this drawing. This is Hall 2.1 in the FIRA, and I'm ready to send this to image construction. And I wanted to make it the smallest file size possible. I have worked on it for a few days in a row. I have added and deleted, and I've changed things, but everything that I've done, I'm happy with this issue, and I would like to say it's a totally clean drawing. I'd like to be the smallest file size possible. I don't want to be any information there that's not meant to be there. So I'm going to use the purge command. Essentially, anything that has a presence, you can't purge. So, for example, this layer here, this block here is called Venue Hall 2 Service Chest. Because it has a presence, as in we can physically see it, you can't purge it. In the same manner is I'm going to freeze that layer. It's visually not there, but it's there because it's frozen. And as a consequence, it has a presence. I'm not allowed to purge that layer.
I think, Tom, we should just very quickly explain what purge does. It does clean and wipe away from the drawing. It's removing stuff that hasn't been made deleted, but the drawing's still holding information within it. It's removing anything that's not used. And Tom's example of layers is a classic one. If you've got a template drawing and you've got a load of template layers there, if you have layer purge selected, if you haven't put something on your XREF layer for sound, it will wipe the layer away. So just when you are purging, have some caution, which I think Tom is explaining anyway. Sorry, butted.
No, yeah, absolutely. Of course, I fully agree with you. So I'm going to do Z enter, E enter. I'm happy with this. It's ready to send off. The production manager wants it desperately. I'm going to type in purge. And so the purgeable items are items that were once there, but are not visually represented anymore. So there's wherever you've got a plus next to the item. So these blocks are there, the line types are there. So I'm going to do purge all. I'm going to purge this drawing. There's everything that's in here I'm happy with, but to represent this, I'm going to use this this layer here. So this is called design reference. It's the horizontal and vertical, or the X and Y line, which is physically as a chalk mark on the floor. I'm going to erase it. We can clearly see it's not there anymore. But if we go to the layer list here, it's still there, and you're like, oh gosh, why is it still there? I'm sure I deleted it. When you delete it, you're deleting that instance of it, but you're not removing it in its entirety, because AutoCAD might think that you desire that line in the future to do a new line over here. But to be on the safe side, as long as the layer is not selected, so I'm going to go to a different layer. I'm going to 0, enter to go to layer 0. I can use the purge command. And I now have, if I click on the plus next to layers, I have a layer that's called design reference. It's quite a useful tool to think, why on earth am I purging that layer? Because I desperately know that that should not be purgeable. And therefore, I've made a mistake and I have deleted those reference lines. So it's a good double check. So I can click escape, I can do undo, and I can go back to the point where I've deleted that. And I think, oh gosh, there we go. That's lucky I didn't send that off without those lines on, because image construction wouldn't understand what this drawing is if those X and Y lines in there are there. And so therefore now I can just do the purge command just as a double check. There's no pluses next to any of these items, which are the different categories. And as a consequence, I'm happy for this to be sent off. So that's what purge is.
Absolutely brilliant description. And I think a lot of people, if you receive a drawing, as Tom said at the start, that's absolutely huge. This is a very good place to start. Purge your drawing, regen all, which regenerates everything. It's like the regen command. And then you've got a good, clean starting base, as long as you have some knowledge of what you are purging. It's always worth looking down that list.
And Dom, I think it's a relatively safe thing to do, because if you're able to purge it, it means that it's not visually represented. So therefore, you could go to the blocks and you could say block number 335 is there, but it's not inserted anywhere. So therefore, me as the end user, I don't know where it should be inserted. So as a consequence, whoever produced the drawing, they've deleted block number 335. So it's totally safe. In comparison to another tool that you can use, which is not safe, is called overkill. And I think we talked about it in the past. It reduces the file size massively, but you have, in theory, you have control, but you essentially don't have control. It's where two lines are directly on top of one another, or two seats are on top of one another, or two lights on top of one another, and you delete one of them, but you don't really know what it's doing, because it does it automatically. And that's in comparison to purging a drawing that's just come in, that's 25 megabytes. It doesn't. I don't think it's an unsafe thing to do.
And as somebody who sends plans back to Tom and Dom, in DraftSight it's called Clean, and I thoroughly recommend it, because you watch the file sizes just go from megs down to kilobytes.
Which means it's easier to email to one another, or it's easier even as a user to open and close. So I suppose in theory, a 25 megabyte file nowadays doesn't matter in the slightest, but if it was closer to 5, but purely because you can purge, maybe it's a little bit easier for opening and closing or emailing it, so forth.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
No. So we talked about flatten already. So unless we would like to discuss it any more, shall we go to W block?
Yeah, I think.
Okay, so W. So I have my drawing of a theatre, and I'm going to. How am I going to? I'm going to. Is this going to? Oh yeah, sorry. It's changed slightly in 2021. When you insert a block, you have a palette on the left-hand side. So basically, within the blocks palette, I can have a visual representation of all the blocks that are in here. So actually, if I do extra large icons and I scroll to the bottom, I can see, for example, that I have a grand circle seat or a stool seat. And I would like to send the grand circle seat to Dom, because Dom would like to draw another theatre. So I can do W block, enter, and I can select the name of the block. and I'm going to scroll right to the bottom. And what did I say? I'm going to send him the stalls because I can't remember what I just said. I'm going to select the location that I'd like to save it, and in this circumstance, is a folder on the desktop. I'm going to say save, and I think that I'm going to click OK. It wasn't possible to see because it was so quick, but quickly there was a dialog box that came up here, and it's a representation of what's being exported. And if I were to go to my desktop, and I think I saved it in here, I've got the stalls seat. I'm going to open it up, and in theory, and I do Z enter, E enter, and it's just the stalls seat there with the insertion point as such. And so therefore I can email that as an 87 kilobyte file to Dom, who's going to send it, put it in his theatre, and he can insert it as a block. So that is WBlock. Another quite handy tool is WBlock All. This is another Lisp, and I'm so sorry, I don't know where I got it because I've used it for quite a number of years. I'm fairly certain that it's not from Lee Mac, but I'm almost confident it is. But essentially, it repeats that process for everything. So because I'm not entirely sure what Dom wants, why don't I send him everything? So I'm going to type in WBlock All. I would like to save that folder in this folder here. So copy that file name, Control C, Control V, enter. And the top left-hand corner, you'll see that it's doing a preview of all the blocks. And once it's finished, which is just doing the scale bars, I'm just going to move on to the seats in a moment. It's going to save all of these blocks. I should have purged this drawing, shouldn't I? But therefore, essentially, that same folder has all the items in a block, and I can send Dom all of these seats just in case he wants to do a stall seat, and then he wants to do a grand circle seat and a circle box seat.
So would this kind of command be really useful for people who wanted to build up their own little block symbol library type thing?
Yes, absolutely. The only caveat is, so I have a library of lots and lots of blocks, and I've organized them all separately. So I have truss blocks of different sections and such like, and they're all separated into their own individual files in the same way as these are. But AutoCAD 2021, and Dom, I don't know if you come across it in Mac, and I don't know if it's changed in Mac, you can't, sorry, I'm going to say something which could be entirely wrong, but I don't believe that you can insert a block in the same way. So when I go to the block on the left-hand side, it's asking for a block, and I go to library, it's asking for a block library. So rather than having an individual person seated, it's asking for a whole library of all of the section of people, and then it will divide it out. It's a bit of a weird one, and I haven't quite got my head round it. I can kind of understand why it's useful, but when I've got quite an organized library, it's not quite as useful. So the answer is yes and a little bit no.
I think I understand. Yes.
It's the same on Mac. They've updated it, and I haven't quite got my head around it. And going back to when I'm using Windows, exactly the same as you, I point the block library at a drawing with all my blocks in, and then it pulls them through from there. So
yeah. I absolutely. So how I used to do it, Dick, is insert, and it would say, I can't even do it anymore. It used to come up with a dialog box, and maybe I'm just writing the wrong thing in. Maybe if I just type in insert, what else does it say? Insert object. I'm fairly certain. Basically, you used to do insert, a dialog box would come up. You would select the location of a single block. So I got CAD blocks. I go to rigging. I go to truss. In 2D, and I've got this Thomas truss here, and I've got that physical piece of truss is 520 by 520 by 1.5 meters long. I do open, but rather than inserting it, it's trying to be too clever. So what I really need to do, here we go, and now it's got this auto public. Here it is. Now it's got a visual representation of that block, and I can drag and drop, which is amazing. Totally incredible, but it means that I need to go back to that Thomas truss, and rather than having individual 1 meter, meter and a half, 2 meter as separate individual files, I need to make all those Thomas truss as one file and insert it. So I can fully understand why the change has happened. I haven't got my head around how I'm going to implement it from my current filing system to a future filing system, which they are implementing now.
And I suppose at this point in time, we should, I don't know if we talked about Design Center, but very quickly talk about Design Center as another way of pulling blocks and line styles and layouts between drawings. I don't know if you can just bring Design Center up quickly, Tom, and just show that if you've got a couple of open drawings, it allows you to move stuff within your own AutoCAD.
Yeah, so how I use it is much, much more powerful than how I use it. But I have edited, if I save that block, I've edited seat stools in this drawing. It's called drawing number 2. But in this drawing here, I'm desperate to make sure it's the same as drawing number 2. So I do Control 2 to bring it up. It's asking me to, within drawing number 2, so basically it's got a list of the 3 open drawings. Within drawing number 2, I click the plus icon, I find the blocks, it gives me a visual representation of the blocks. I can see the circle in the center is there. I do right click on it and I do redefine only. And if I do redefine only, the drawing refreshes and I can see the circle is now in there. So that's how a quick way of how I use the Design Center.
Cool, and you can also, I think if you also say you can drag, say if you're working for a different company, you want to drag a layout in, you can literally just drag it from Design Center onto the drawing and just drop it, and it will insert, and it'll be the same for blocks and things like that.
And it's an amazing way of bringing dimension styles over or text styles into a new template when you're working in a new company.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think everyone should get their heads around Design Center if you're a Windows user. Take it from there.
I don't think I have Design Center. I think
if anyone wants to sponsor Digger CAD license, for God's sake, just leave it play.
Do we have time to talk about anything else, or are we
kind of coming up to an hour? I think we were just going to talk about updating plans and filtering and stuff like that. If you feel you want to do it, or we can hang it over.
Because can I talk about comparing?
Yes.
Here I have an open drawing with an XREF in. I've chosen Hall 6 in the Fira in Barcelona. Dom's gone on a site visit and he has asked me to update this drawing. So I can, with the external reference open, I can do PA plan venue. I can open that XREF. He's told me specifically that these 2 columns are not in this location. They're down here. That trap doesn't exist. And this is longer like this. I do Z enter, E enter. I do save the drawing, save the XREF by saying yes. So when I say XREF at this point, it's just a totally normal drawing. I've gone back into the layout and it's asking me a question. It says, hang on a minute, somebody has changed the XREF. In 2021, there is a tick box of compare the changes. So before in 2020 or older, that box wouldn't exist, and all it would say is reload PA plan venue by T White. I've got the tick box selected and I reload it. And rather than me not knowing where to focus, it focuses on the area for me. So anything is in grey is the same. Anything in red is different. Basically it's red and green. So is red is the old drawing, is green is the new drawing. So red's the old drawing, green's the new drawing, and in this circumstance it doesn't exist at all. So it gives me a really, really good understanding with a revision cloud around these items of what the changes are. And I just click OK, I'm happy with that. You're more likely to use it in a different circumstance. So I'm going to close this drawing. I believe you're more likely to use it because the compare command has existed for 2 or 3 years, I believe, maybe slightly longer. I've got too many dialogue. Here we go. So I'm going to use this. I've got one drawing which is called PA plan venue, which is open, and I would like to compare this drawing to PA plan venue version 2. It brings it in. It opens. The only way this works is if you don't change the location of the UCS, and the drawing is saved at the identical location. So in exactly the same way, it highlights the area. Grey is no change, and it highlights the changes. So green's the old drawing, red's the new drawing, etc. So it highlights all the changes, and it is unbelievably helpful. And I'm fairly certain one of these boxes up here. It's a bit frustrating. One of these boxes up here is you can export the snapshot, and so therefore you're going to export this information here.
Just the changes.
Just the changes, and I'm going to save it. Yeah, I'm just going to save it there, and I would like to open it, and I would like to say yes, Sorry, there we go. So it opens up there, and I'm fairly certain, yes. Yeah, so it's saved the snapshot with the items highlighted around. So I can send this over to Dom and say, Dom, are you aware these changes happen? And you would say, no, that was a mistake, or yes, that's exactly what we desired. And it's a really, really nice way of presenting it to, often in my experience, presenting to the contractor to say, last minute, this was changed. Can you change it quickly, rather than trying to describe it or trying to put your own revision clouds around. So it's an unbelievably powerful tool that I use relatively frequently.
For those of us who receive plans that are updated on a kind of weekly, fortnightly basis, to be able to run the compare function, see the stuff that's changed, is enormously, as Tom said. And when you first showed me this, I got hugely excited. And for those who aren't real CAD people, Autodesk have a program called Design Review, which has the compare function in it. And as Tom said, so long as those two drawings have the same base point, it will do it. And that's a free program. It's as easy as you like, and it sits there as one button and just shows you those green and red changes. Absolutely free.
Yep. I think for production electricians, it's a command I use a lot when you're sent a new plan from an LD and you maybe got 600 lights on it, and you can see in the key, like I showed you earlier, that the numbers have changed. There's 2 more of those and 5 less of those. And, oh, really, where are they within 600 lights? Come on. Just compare the previous drawing. Oh, there they are. Cool. Because I want to pick up the electrics information. I want to update socket and stuff like that. And instantly you can tell where those lights he's moved or he's changed, and off you go again. So. Yep. Cool. I think it's been another amazing week with huge amounts of information, and I hope, as always, we'll say if any of you want us to talk about anything or research anything for you, do give us a shout through the kind of LinkedIn channels or emails or things like that. We're not that hard to find. We will carry on. I think I don't know what we'll talk about next week. But Willis is updating. Willis from a couple of weeks ago. Willis and Dick have been very busy in the background. I've started seeing a few bits of Willis using our models to put video screens in and show how he can demonstrate, even before you go into production, really, of what types of video screens he can put in different areas and what it looks like to have a film run on it. And that's quite amazing. So hopefully once Willis has finished his work and he can join us again and show us that as a new powerful tool of talking. I think Cookie's back on the 9th. He may not join us next week or maybe the week after. And I'm hoping to find an LD to come in as well to do that talking of data moving down the line from Tom and I through an LD to a production electrician and to Willis as well. And so that's our kind of thinking over the next couple of weeks, also with some learning as we can think of more commands that will help you all out. So from me, bye-bye. Thank you very much indeed for joining us again. So it's been another hour-long one. If Dave's not here, we talk a lot more, but hopefully it's all useful to you. Gentlemen?
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Have a brilliant week. Thank you.
Cheers all.